And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to yet another incredible installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very high above all the puerile and vacuous forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. It's Friday. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. It's Friday. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. It's Friday, Groundhog Day, February 2nd, 2024. Now, I don't really understand why we pay any attention to some dumb marmot and think that the marmot can tell us exactly what the weather is going to do. I get it, it's all about tradition, and it's kind of fun every February 2nd, listening or watching whatever that dumb little critter is going to do. You know, we don't have groundhogs in Wyoming. We have rockchucks. Well, more specifically, we have yellow-bellied marmots. So it's very similar to the groundhog, just an entirely different critter. And no one would pay any attention to what a dumb rockchuck is doing. And frankly, the only reason why you would pay attention to one is to blast it into about 1 million pieces, as all rockchucks deserve to have done to them. Well, good morning, my friends, and welcome to the Friday installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. There is a lot going on this Friday morning. And so we're going to begin with what is top of the news on foxnews.com this morning. An article entitled, "Will Congress Ever Have Term Limits? 4 Republicans sided with Democrats to kill the latest proposal, our own Harriet Hageman among them." Now, this is an issue that, quite frankly, I have pussyfooted around for far too long with. And the reason I have is I think that there are people of good intentions on both sides, more so on the Republican side. And the argument is that you've got these politicians in office, and they sit there for 20, 30 years and become the halls of Congress have become very similar to the halls of a geriatric ward. And that's not really an exaggeration. There are many people in Congress who are well into their 80s. Dianne Feinstein was in a wheelchair and didn't know what time of day it was or if she had her slippers on or not, and she was still voting. An absolute disgrace to our country and to her state of California. So I get the sentiment that politicians are in office way too long, and the longer they're there, the more they tend to drift towards the liberal side of things. So I get it. And this is an issue that people on both sides of the aisle support. Both the Democrats and Republicans overwhelmingly support term limits. But it's a really stupid idea. And like I said, I've pussyfooted around this too often because I was trying to be fair to people with good intentions. And the truth is, most people don't understand the Constitution. Most people don't understand how our government works. And they certainly are uninformed about this whole term limit thing. From Fox News, and I quote, "Term limits have been discussed for decades among voters and elected officials, leading many to question whether the possibility of such a change to the American political landscape could ever reach fruition. A September 2023 poll found that a majority of adults, 87%, favor limits on the number of terms each member of Congress is allowed to serve. The Pew Research Center study also found that term limits are almost equally popular among both Democrats and Republicans. Among those who were surveyed, 90% of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents said they supported them. Democrats and Democrat-leaning voters largely agreed, with 86% giving the nod to limits on how long a lawmaker can serve in either body of Congress. On any given issue, my friends, you need to look to the motivations as to why one side of the political spectrum supports something and why the other side supports the very same thing. And this is a perfect example. So why would Republicans support term limits? Well, for the reasons that I mentioned, that we don't need a geriatric ward, that our system was never designed that way. It was designed for, Farmer Joe to get elected to Congress, go there for a couple of terms, and then come home back to his farm and then let somebody else take over the job. That's how our system was set up. It was never intended to have politicians in office for, decades, much less multiple decades. But we also have to look at the other side. Why would Democrats be in favor of this? Well, certainly their politicians being in office for a decade or more, serves their political purposes. So why then would they be in favor of getting rid of their favorite politicians? Let me think about it here. Well, let me explain this by example. Let's say you have a particularly effective representative in the House of Representatives, Harriet Hageman, for example, and she's in her first 2 years, she's been remarkable. She's made a tremendous impact on the whole House of Representatives, which is incredible for a freshman legislator. So let's say she gets elected again, which she undoubtedly will. I haven't heard of anybody that's going to try to primary her. And let's say she serves a third term, which we might debate that a little bit later on in a different program. But let's just say that she's there for 3 terms. And she's become tremendously effective. She's gained a lot of influence in the House and is rising the leadership ranks quickly, which undoubtedly, if Harriet stays in the House, that will most definitely happen. Mark my words on that one, my friends. But she doesn't exactly have friends on the other side, because Harriet is in the habit of bashing all things Democrat stupidity, and she does so repeatedly. But if there were term limits, that would be an easy way to get rid of an effective congressperson, or senator for that matter, without having to beat them in an election. That the system itself would remove effective legislators. So why would Democrats be in favor of that? Because they could get rid of the most effective legislator without even having to spend a dime in an election to beat them. So it's an easy way to stack the ranks of the Congress for them. It makes sense. You see, Democrats and Republicans look at the world from 2 completely and distinct different worldviews. Let's take Democrats first. Democrats believe that the ends justify the means. That if they believe in their end goal, whatever it is, welfare, higher taxes, socialism, which most of them are in favor of anyway, if you believe in that end goal, then anything you do leading up to it is absolutely justified. That the ends justify the means it took to get to the end goal. Republicans, on the other hand, would never suggest that the ends justify the means. For us, how we get to a goal is equally, if not more important than the end goal itself. We would never be the people that would say lying is okay, cheating in an election so long as you win is okay. None of us would ever advocate for that. For us, the ends never justify the means. So it is 2 entirely different and polar opposite worldviews. So if Republicans are supporting term limits for, valid reasons, for admirable reasons, you could assume, just on face, without even having to analyze it, that Democrats are supporting the measure for the exact opposite reason. Republicans are behind it because we don't think that entrenched legislators need to be there for that long. We don't think that it's a good thing that people take our country down the road to socialism, and this pace picks up the longer they're in office. Democrats, on the other hand, look at it entirely differently. Despite the polling data, a measure introduced last year by Representative Ralph Norman of South Carolina was killed by the House committee it was referred to, preventing it from making it to the full House for a vote. House Joint Resolution 11, an amendment to the United States Constitution, would have limited those serving in the House to 3 terms for a total of 6 years, and those serving in the Senate to 2 terms for a total of 12 years. Shortly after the measure was introduced in January of 2023, it was referred to the House Judiciary Committee, and it wasn't until 8 months later, in September, that the bill was considered by the committee and shot down by 4 Republicans and all the Democrats who served on the committee. In total, the measure received 17 ayes and 19 nays. So Fox News reached out to those 4 Republicans that voted against it, and the first person they talked to was our representative, Harriet Hageman. She's represented our congressional district since 2023, after she beat Crickets Cheney in the state's 2022 presidential primary election. And here's what Harriet had to say. Quote, "Haven't we learned from Democrat stunts against President Trump that it's a terrible idea to undemocratically remove candidates from the ballot for arbitrary reasons? Term limits would deny voters a choice that they may want to make. Also, in a time when unelected career federal bureaucrats are wielding more power than ever, using regulations to carry out the agenda of the radical leftist environmental extremists, why would we make them even more powerful by forcibly removing members of Congress who know how to fight against them? We already have term limits. We call them elections. And in the House, we have them every 2 years. You only have to look at the seat I currently hold for the people of Wyoming to see that if voters are dissatisfied, they can always change horses. I've held more than 50 town halls across Wyoming since 2022, and when this topic comes up, I always very clearly explain why I am opposed to term limits. Voters know where I stand." Now let's look at the historical implications of this. It is absolutely absurd to think that our founders didn't consider this when writing the Constitution. We had just finished fighting the Revolutionary War against the King of England, someone who was undemocratically elected and served a life term. Why wouldn't we sit around and say, it would probably be a bad idea if we had a king? That's why they created the office of the presidency and designed a system by which the president is elected. It is absolutely dumb to think that they didn't consider term limits. In fact, they did. They're called elections, as Representative Hageman said. If voters are unsatisfied with the person who currently holds the office, they need only to vote them out of office. So then, let's deal with the question of politicians that are in there for the better part of a lifetime, like Joe Biden. How do they get there? Well, they have to be elected. Yeah, they have to win an election, and then another election, and then another election, and then another election, and then another election. It's Groundhog Day, so I feel like repeating myself over and over. So who then elects them? Well, see, that's us. That's our job. So really, if a politician is in office for 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years in Joe Biden's case, there's only one group of people to blame: us. Because we are the ones that continually elect them. Now, I have some questions how the people in Nancy Pelosi's district could elect her election after election after election. My conclusion is there are either monumentally stupid or tremendously uninformed. I'm going to go with the latter of those two, and maybe a mix of both of them. But people are uninformed. People are unengaged. I've told you over and over on the program that in Wyoming, half of the population is eligible to vote. Half of those are actually registered to vote, and only half of those actually go vote. So we have a tremendous amount of voter apathy, and not just in Wyoming, in the entire United States. It is a very small percentage of the total population that actually goes and votes. So let me give you another instance. So let's say you've got a legislator that's been in there for 4 years or so, and they've got one more term left because you've passed term limits. And voters are already apathetic. They don't go to the polls to vote anyway. And so they look at the term limit and they say, well, we really don't have to do anything because that person is going to be out of office in 2 years. And so one of the unintended results of term limits is going to be to increase voter apathy, a disastrous idea. We already have an unengaged populace. You put term limits into the Constitution, it's just going to increase voter apathy, and you're going to have even fewer or even less people participate in our political process. I think that's a very, very big disadvantage, one that we shouldn't even tempt the fates with, as it were. So, first, we already have term limits. Second, if politicians are in office for what we consider to be way too long, we only have one person to blame, ourselves. Third, there's a reason why it's not in the Constitution. And here's the final reason, that our founders, John Adams, George Washington, all of them believed that our constitutional republic is wholly inadequate for anybody who is not educated and profoundly religious. That a representative republic requires participation so that you know who it is that's representing you, so you know what policies are happening in Washington, D.C., and so that you know when somebody screws up in office that you have to get rid of them. If you pass term limits, you're going to have a series of very unfortunate events happen afterwards. Increased voter apathy. You're going to have the Democrats gain power, or the leftists gain power, however you want to look at that. So it's a horrible idea, and we just have to look to the plain text of the Constitution and ask ourselves, why are term limits not there? Well, it's for all of those reasons that I just mentioned. Harriet Hageman is right on the money. And if you happen to be one of those people that believes in term limits, that thinks that that's a good idea, like I said, I'm done pussyfooting around. You need to educate yourself. You need to pick up a book and read and find out why that's a terrible idea. Find out why the founders didn't put that in the Constitution. It's for a very good reason that we already have term limits, and they're called elections. And the people that are in charge of elections, or the people that participate in elections, that's us. So if you got a politician in there for way too long, it's your fault, not the fault of the Constitution. So my friends, after that, I've put my little soapbox away for a moment. But it is Groundhog Day, and while I don't completely understand why we should pay attention to some dumb marmot, I think that it's interesting, and so I have a little soundbite for you here of Punxsutawney Phil's announcement. Now, of course, Punxsutawney Phil can't talk, so he speaks by proxy through what I'm assuming is some sort of elected person in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. And we need to really look into this and figure out how this ridiculous tradition got started. Who in their right mind said, let's ask the groundhog what the weather is going to be? Well, I suppose at that time they probably didn't have meteorologists, so, what the groundhog had to say was at least as reliable as what everybody else had to say, so why not have some fun with it? But anyway, here is Punxsutawney Phil's announcement of Groundhog Day.
It's a tradition. Before we get Phil out, we get him fired up by chanting, Phil, 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 Phil.
Okay,
Phil,
can't handle this.
Phil,
Let's fast forward.
Phil.
Now, right now, they're digging him out of his hole, which is an old tree stump. Now, let's fast forward a little bit more.
A prediction has been made, Mr. President.
Here we go.
Hear ye, hear ye! Now on this February 2nd, Punxsutawney Phil, the seer of seers, prognosticator of all prognosticators, was awakened from his wintry nap at dawn on Gobbler's Knob. Phil looked to the sky and then, speaking in groundhogese, directed the president to the proper scroll, which reads, Another winter's slumbered pause so I could meet the crowd. Hard to sleep anyway when the party's this loud. I envy your energy. I envy the fun. I envy all of you and your opposable thumbs. But it's not what I feel, it's what I see and what you hear, so gather round and let me be clear. Atmosphere is a wonderful thing, and we can create our own and the weather it brings. It brings hope for the future and so much more. Maybe some Punxsutawney Phil write-in votes in 2024. But what this weather did not provide is a shadow or reason to hide. Glad tidings on this Groundhog Day. An early spring is on the way.
Yay! Not that we needed a dumb marmot to tell us exactly what was going to happen with the weather. So, other people that we should probably not listen to, or that people have stopped listening to, there's a new study out about what people trust, what Americans trust. This comes to us from The Blaze, and every year this same sort of study comes out, and it's just kind of a poll, a pretty good sized poll that asks people who they trust. And you know, some of the options are the media, politicians, doctors, those sorts of things. But two of the biggest groups are losing big time trust in America, and those are doctors and police. From The Blaze, and I quote, Americans have lost trust in some of the most important roles in a society, including those in the medical industry, teaching, and especially positions of institutional power. A Gallup poll in Honesty and Ethics conducted at the end of 2023 asked 800 respondents to rate the ethical standards of and their overall trust in a series of professions. Quote, how would you rate the honesty and ethical standards of people in these different fields? The survey asked. In terms of very high trust, all professions but one took a hit compared to previous years. The poll measured the downward trends dating back to 2019, showing that medical doctors, pharmacists, bankers, and journalists have lost the most trust. Go figure with that last one. Medical doctors went from 65% in 2019 down to 56% in 2023, while pharmacists dropped from 64 to 55. Bankers and journalists' ethics decreased in the public eye from a whopping 28% in 2019 to 19% in 2023. Chiropractors, clergy, and business executives took 8-point hits in the survey, tied for the second highest decreases. Dentists, stockbrokers, insurance people, and used car salesmen fared among the best on the survey over the same period of time. However, dentists were the only profession of the top gainers that did not already have abysmal ratings for the very high trust category. Dentists had 59%, while insurance salesmen and stockbrokers were trusted at a rate of just 12%. Car salespeople were near the bottom at only 8%. Completely bottoming out the list in terms of high levels of trust were senators at just 8%, and members of Congress who were rated as having very high ethical standards by just 6% of respondents. The only profession to see an increase in perceived ethics standards were labor union leaders. Well, okay, so maybe this poll isn't exactly all that accurate if people are trusting union leaders like Richard Trumka. Actually, Richard Trumka is a former union leader, but if people are trusting him more than even a congressperson, we've got some serious problems, my friends. But in any case, this is a poll that's been done since 2019. And that's how long Gallup's been doing it. And others have been conducting the poll prior to Gallup taking it over. But it kind of shows you where American sentiments are at. Certainly, we don't trust politicians, nor should you. I think that before they take office, politicians go through some sort of class that teaches them how to lie. That's about the only way that they would get that level of trust. So anyway, there you have it. Americans trust politicians way less than used car salesmen. That's something to tell us. That's something very telling about our country, my friends. Well, for the rest of today's program, as you may have noticed, over the past few episodes, I've tried to come up with a theme, a title, a direction that we're going to take the program. And this morning I found a lot of articles that, or a lot of stories, not just articles, that really tell us a lot about where we are as a country. You know, I think it's important to take stock of where you're at, not only in your personal life, but where you're at in your community, your state, and the country. And there's some very disturbing signs going on. Clearly, we have a leftist president in office. When you rank up all of the leftist politicians or leftist presidents that we've had, I mean, number one on the list has either got to be Woodrow Wilson, I hate that guy, or Barack Obama, or Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden's not the one that's running anything. We all know that. He's little better than a puppet. However, the policies that he's put in place, or that his administration has put in place, have been far more radical than pretty much any other president that we've had. Even Woodrow Wilson. I mean, Woodrow Wilson was a really, really bad guy. I mean, he even screened the movie The Birth of a Nation at the White House. The Birth of a Nation was put together by the Ku Klux Klan. Woodrow Wilson was the guy that desegregated the military after it had already been desegregated. He split it again. Woodrow Wilson is the first president to create this big administrative state apparatus that we are all living through right now. You can blame all of that on Woodrow Wilson, but even he doesn't rise to the level of all of the liberal and leftist things that we've all experienced in the last few years. So definitely Joe Biden's at the top. But one of the stories that I noticed this morning, and this one is pretty terrifying. Actually, there's a couple of them that are pretty terrifying, but this one in particular. From the New York Times, Biden orders sanctions on 4 Israelis over West Bank violence. President Biden on Thursday ordered broad financial and travel sanctions on Israeli settlers accused of violent attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank, a forceful gesture aimed in part at Arab American voters in the United States who have expressed fury about the president's backing of Israel's war in Gaza. All right, this is the New York Slimes, so there's a number of problems with that opening paragraph. First of all, there are no settlers in the West Bank. That's not a thing. The media and leftists and Palestinian supporters have basically created the myth that the West Bank is controlled entirely by Palestinians, that it's a separate country, and in some respects it is. But the settlements, so-called settlements, are in Old Jerusalem. Old Jerusalem, my friends. They are not settlers. And for the New York Times to claim that they are is, absolutely abhorrent. But they've created this myth that somehow Israel is pushing people into other people's territories so they can set up shop. And that's just not the case. It's the historical city of Jerusalem that the New York Slimes is talking about. Second, the Biden administration has not really been in support of Israel's war in Gaza. Just yesterday, I was telling you how Anthony Blinken has been floating the idea of unilaterally saying we need a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians. Claiming that you need a two-state solution is the same thing as saying you need a one-state solution, and it will not be the Israelis in charge. A two-state solution inevitably is going to lead to the destruction of Israel. That's what this whole war is about. And the truth is, the Palestinians did have a two-state solution, but they weren't satisfied with that. In 1988, the United Nations recognized Palestinian independence. Now, it wasn't until 2005 that Israel finally relinquished control of the Gaza Strip. But prior to October 7th, the Gaza Strip was in complete control of the Palestinians. Now, they still got some aid from Israel, water, some services, electricity, those sorts of things. But really, whatever happened in the Gaza Strip, that was up to the Palestinian Authority and their military arm, Hamas. So to claim that it wasn't basically an independent country is absolute buffoonery. It is not true, my friends. So what happened with the two-state solution? Well, the Palestinians and their military arm, Hamas, weren't satisfied with the current situation, and so they launched 4,400 rockets into a neighboring country and then decried the response. Now, excuse me, let's just ask a simple question here. What would happen, do you think, not with the Biden administration, but let's say Trump is in office, what do you think would happen if Mexico launched 4,400 rockets into the interior of the United States? I think it's pretty clear what would happen. We'd be inducting our 51st state called Mexico. That's what would happen. There would be a huge military response, and we would own Mexico. So let's not for a minute lie to ourselves and say that, oh, the poor Palestinians, they've been so controlled by the Israelis. None of that is true. There are not settlers in the West Bank. And the fact that Joe Biden ordered sanctions on 4 Israeli citizens over, quote, West Bank violence from settlers is absolutely appalling and shocking. The article continues, for Mr. Biden, quote, for Mr. Biden, the order served a dual purpose. It was a sharp diplomatic notice to Israel's government at the time when the United Nations is pressing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for restraint. But it also sent a message to Arab Americans, a key part of the political coalition he needs to be reelected, that he is serious about using the power of the United States on behalf of the Palestinians. There you have it, my friends, that this is nothing more than a political move that Biden is using to try to buy votes. I mean, that's the only way that he can convince people to vote for him is to buy them. That's what all of the student loan forgiveness is about. That's what these sanctions on these 4 Israelis are all about. Because Democrats don't have any arguments left. They have no reason. I mean, they have nothing that they can use to persuade Americans to vote for them. The economy is in the crapper. Joe Biden has screwed up every foreign policy decision that has come before him. The border is a mess. I mean, you can go down the list of all of the things that Joe Biden has screwed up, and none of them end up in the Democrats' win column. And so, they only have 2 options left to try to win an election. First, orange man bad, and second, buy votes. That's exactly what they're up to. Well, let's go ahead and take a quick break, and then we'll come back to yet another Joe Biden story. Evidently, our president's got a little bit of a potty mouth. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a better source of news, entertainment, and commentary than on Cowboy State Politics Live. You know, the program you're listening to right now. And frankly, why would you want to look anywhere else anyway? Let's be honest, it'd be pretty dumb to look anywhere else. And if you want to listen to my podcast, you can find it at cowboystatepolitics.com or anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. If your name is Sleepy Joe Biden and you can't remember if you put socks on this morning or not, well, I can't really help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president of the United States. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live. Wyoming's conservative voice. Documented to be almost always right. Almost 99% of the time. Executing host duties flawlessly. My friends, it appears that our commander-in-chief has a bit of a potty mouth. Yes, you see, the people that call for civility all of the time tend to be the least civil among us. Now, in Wyoming, we need only to point to the Frontier Republicans. Now, there's a group I haven't mentioned for quite a long time. When the Frontier Republicans announced their formation, their coming out party, as it were, they immediately called for civility and said that we conservatives are the evil, nasty ones and that we're hateful and we say mean things about those people who aren't really Republicans. And then immediately, our good pal Pinocchio Joe McGinley down in Casper referred to all conservatives as cockroaches. Not even in this, I mean, it didn't even take him 10 minutes to get off the civility train. Think about how many times AOC, Albert Ogden conservatives, have referred to radical right-wing extremists or the right wing of the Republican Party or extraordinarily extreme conservatives. How many times have you seen that in an op-ed that they've written? Or the President of the United States giving a half-hour address attacking everyone who supports President Trump as a threat to democracy. And yet these are the very same people that are calling for civility in our elections. But according to the Daily Caller, Biden privately refers to President Trump as a sick F and an effing a-hole. Indeed, at least 3 people have heard President Biden call Trump a sick F in private settings, citing claims that Trump was cheering on the January 6, 2021 riot at the Capitol building. I'm sure he was. According to Politico, during his January 6th speech near Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, Biden repeatedly almost used the term publicly, calling him a sick before letting the sentence trail off to applause and laughter from the crowd. And I quote, Trump and his MAGA supporters not only embrace political violence, but they laugh about it, Biden said during the speech. At his rally, quote, at his rally, he jokes about an intruder whipped up by the big Trump lie, taking a hammer to Paul Pelosi's skull and echoing the very same words used on January 6th. Where's Nancy? And he thinks that's funny. He laughed about it. What a sick, yeah. Well, that guy that attacked Paul Pelosi, he wasn't a Trump supporter. In fact, he was a crazy person. Yeah, a radical nudist who worked, or I can't remember if he either worked for or just supported Bernie Sanders, but definitely not a Trump supporter and definitely not a conservative. One person told Politico that Biden has called Trump an effing asshole in private as well. Pardon the slip of the tongue there, my friends. I meant to say a-hole. Biden campaigned on restoring civility during the 2020 campaign, but since his inauguration, he has attacked Trump and his supporters. In a September 22 speech in Philadelphia, Biden claimed that they posed a threat to democracy. During the 2012 presidential campaign, Biden attacked then-Republican presidential Mitt Romney, claiming that he would put you all back in chains. While Biden has accused Trump and his supporters of being threats to democracy, Democratic Secretary of State Shenna Bellows of Maine disqualified Trump for the office of President of the United States on December 28th, citing the 14th Amendment's insurrection clause and the Capitol riot. The Colorado Supreme Court ruled Trump was disqualified from appearing on the ballot in the 2024 election in a 4-3 decision. However, he's still going to be on their primary ballot. Quote, you can't have a contest. You can't have a contest if you see politics as an all-out war instead of a peaceful way to resolve differences, Biden said at Valley Forge. Quote, all-out war is what Trump wants. These are the people that call for civility, my friends. These are the very people that try to shout down any extreme rhetoric on the one hand, and when you're not looking, they are the least civil people among us. I could play you soundbite after soundbite of members of our own Wyoming legislature saying some pretty nasty things about Republicans and about conservatives, about you. And yet these are the very people that call for civility. How many op-eds have you read from the Redcoats that defame the Freedom Caucus every chance they get, that defame conservatives each and every time, and yet they're the folks that came up with the so-called commitment or conservative commitment to Wyoming. Nothing about these people is conservative, and nothing about them is civil. So we are all aware of the push towards, and shifting gears here so I don't, my head doesn't explode. We're all aware of the reality of this renewable energy push that all of us are being forced into, whether we like it or not. But there are some companies, some of which who were pioneers in this whole electric renewable energy fiasco, that are now putting the brakes on their operation simply because none of these electric vehicles or devices are actually going to prosper in the free market for a number of reasons. Electric vehicles, for example, unless, of course, you buy a hybrid, which personally I don't think is a bad idea, or an electric vehicle. If you live in a city and you're commuting day to day, that may not be a bad thing for you. I wouldn't do it. I've heard way too many stories about electric vehicle failures to even consider buying one. But Volvo has cut off Polestar funding, despite the fact that Volvo was one of the pioneers in the electric vehicle market. Polestar is their chief electric vehicle, just like the Prius or the Tesla. It's Volvo's version of it. And I quote from the New York Post. Volvo revealed Thursday that it has cut off funding for its electric vehicle subsidiary, Polestar, despite the fact that it was among the first automakers to embrace electric cars. Shares of the Swedish automaker's stock surged more than 30% on Thursday. Again, okay, let me repeat that. Stocks surged 30% on Thursday as the company declared Volvo Cars is focused on developing and concentrating its resources on its most ambitious journey, including its own in-house electric vehicles. Volvo, which currently owns a 48% stake in Polestar, said it was considering ceding more control over the high-end EV maker's operations to China-based Geely Holding. Geely is also Volvo's biggest shareholder, and the two firms collaborated to launch Polestar. Quote, Geely will continue to provide full operational and financial support to Polestar going forward, Volvo said in a release. As a result, and here's the punchline, my friends, as a result, Volvo Cars will no longer provide further funding to Polestar. Despite its decision, Volvo touted signs of progress for its in-house EV efforts. Sales of Volvo's EVs jumped 70% as the company sold 113,000 fully electric cars last year. So it still has plans for the vehicle lineup to be fully electric by 2030. It's just that right now they're not profitable. Go figure. And no doubt the internal mathematics or internal calculations that they're making is that by 2030, technology will have advanced far enough to make those vehicles profitable. It wasn't that long ago that Ford Motor Company released a statement saying that it costs them way more money than they actually bring in to produce an electric vehicle. And if I remember correctly, the numbers were that each piece in their fleet, maybe fleet might be the wrong word, but each electric vehicle they sell costs them around $75,000 to produce. The price point for consumers is $45,000 a year, which I still think is crazy expensive. But Ford is saying that they're on each electric vehicle, they're taking a $30,000 hit. Well, no company is going to continue producing something when they're taking a $30,000 hit every time they roll one out of the warehouse. So how is that money made up? Government subsidies. The truth is, renewable products are only profitable now unless you have government subsidies. Now, I'm not talking about the small appliances like rechargeable drills, and some companies have made electric lawnmowers. The lovely Christine was kind of enamored with an electric lawnmower that we tried out this year. I'm not a fan. I can't finish the front yard without recharging. But anyway, I'm not talking about small market rechargeable devices. I'm talking about cars. So really, those are not profitable unless you have government subsidies. So when you go to the bigger quote-unquote renewable things like windmills, I know for a fact I was at a bid meeting, and this was several years ago, but I was at a bid meeting doing the numbers, and what we're going to bid on is doing all the site work for one of these big giant windmills. And I'm doing the numbers in my laptop as they're going through the bid meeting, and finally I just raised my hand and said, now, according to my spreadsheet, this thing isn't profitable. And they said, you're right, it's not without government subsidies. So, I mean, the truth is that these windmills, they consume way more energy than they actually produce. And in Wyoming, if you haven't noticed, when you're driving down the interstate or down the highway, a lot of them aren't spinning. Why? Because they can't handle 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts. That's why. So anyway, it's probably a sign of things to come that the first person that was out, or the first big company that was out with an electric vehicle, Polestar, has decided they're not going to fund the project anymore. Maybe some politicians ought to take notice of that. Yeah, go figure. Now, the Democrats, they're dealing with a number of things. Not only their push for electric or renewable energy that's failing hand over fist, but they've also got upticks in crime. There's the problem on the border. They've got a whole bunch of problems, almost all of which were their creation. In fact, I would venture to say that all of them are a problem of their creation. Definitely with the border. The first thing that Joe Biden did when he got into office is reverse a bunch of Trump's policies on the border, the stay in Mexico policy and all of that. So definitely the border problem is a one of their own creation, but also crime. A lot of Democrat cities have passed like no cash bail laws. New York and other cities. I mean, every day there's an article about some criminal, usually an illegal immigrant, who's been arrested 27 times, committed another crime, and was just released for yet another one. If you don't prosecute crime, it continues. It's the whole broken windows theory that Mayor Giuliani used in New York. When he took over as mayor, he instituted what he called the broken windows policy. That you see a broken window on a building, there's a high likelihood that some kid or some miscreant is going to come along and break more windows. And so the idea was to fix every broken window so that there's no impetus to commit crime. That's where a stop and frisk policy came from. A lot of those. Well, it dramatically reduced crime in New York. Well, other Democrat cities, Democrat-run cities, have either A, just flatly refused to prosecute criminals, or they've enacted similar policies that let criminals out. In Wyoming, and if you'll notice, I'm trying to relate most of these stories back to Wyoming, but in a lot of Wyoming communities, we have judges that don't prosecute crime. Every day you can pick up the newspaper. Well, every week in Johnson County, you pick up the newspaper, and invariably, there's somebody in there that committed a crime. Drugs are usually the big one, drug possession or drug dealing, and they end up getting probation. Probation for an act that a few years ago would have landed you at least 30 days in the slammer. And then you have people that have been put on probation over and over and over. And weird, if you're caught for the same offense twice before, the likelihood that you're going to do it again is pretty high. I personally know someone that had 2 felonies for possession with intent to distribute, got busted a third time, so there's 3 felonies. Apparently there's no 3 strikes and you're out thing. And out of all of those 3 felonies, only spent 30 days in jail. So what is the deterrent there? There isn't one. There's no reason. I mean, if you're not going to get punished for something, why would you stop doing it? It's a very similar logic that we talked about yesterday on the program. Day before yesterday on the program with Lloyd Larson's bill against transgender surgeries. There's no enforcement mechanism in there. So there's nothing to prevent a doctor from disobeying the law. Same thing with all this probation. Well, now the Democrats they've got a new whipping post for all of these upticks in crime, and it's to blame car companies. I kid you not, my friends, from the Blaze. Democrats are blaming Kia and Hyundai for uptick in car thefts, and they're pressuring the federal government to issue a recall. And I quote, "A coalition of elected leaders from across the country are placing blame on car manufacturers Kia and Hyundai for the recent uptick in vehicle thefts." Yeah, it's clearly the fault of the car producer that their cars are getting jacked. Wow. The group's members recently renewed calls for the federal government to force a recall. On Wednesday, Seattle City Council member Tammy Morales joined a virtual press conference with other council members against car thefts, a coalition to urge the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration to issue a recall for the automobile manufacturer's 2011 to 2021 models. Morales, citing Seattle police statistics, stated that the number of Kias reported stolen increased by 363% from 2021 to 2022, and Hyundai thefts increased by 503%. Quote, "The resolution and the lawsuit are really about corporate responsibility, corporate accountability, and not just the theft, but for the extravagant resources cities across the country have spent," Morales stated. "Mostly young people out stealing cars, driving when they may not know how to drive, putting them at risk, and then using them potentially for other crimes. It's just sort of compounds." Philadelphia City Council member Kendra Brooks, the first Working Families Party member elected to the Philadelphia City Council, also joined the coalition. Quote, "A stolen car can mean the difference between keeping a job and losing a job. And Philadelphia car theft is skyrocketing, and Kia and Hyundais account for more than 60% of the problem. So the reason why car thefts are up is because people have to get to work. Yeah. We commit a crime so that we can keep our job." How hardworking are these people? I mean, wow, my friends. You are so dedicated to your job that you're going to commit grand theft auto to keep it. I wish that we had more people with that motivation. Baltimore City Council member Zeke Cohen stated that the group represents cities, quote, "that are among the hardest hit by Kia and Hyundai thefts." Quote, "These companies have created a major nuisance by failing to install industry-standard theft protection technology in their vehicles. These thefts are overburdening local law enforcement. Cleaning up this mess cannot be left to city governments alone. We need federal oversight to solve the national nightmare created by these manufacturers." So it's the car company's fault that you have criminals running around the street stealing their vehicles. Now, you can travel around just about any city in Wyoming, and you'll see cars from various decades. It's not all that infrequent that I see a 1970s Ford, or a couple of them, driving the streets of Johnson County and Sheridan County, and yet none of those end up stolen. Now, it could be that we have small communities and we don't really have a high crime rate, or it might be that the owners of said vehicle are armed. That might be a thing. I don't know. But instead of punishing car manufacturers for something that is clearly not their fault, these Democrat politicians should place the responsibility where it so rightly belongs, on their own two shoulders. It is the policies of Democrats that are creating crimes. Now, of course, there's personal responsibility in it. So if you're a criminal, you're ultimately responsible. But if there's policies put in place that make it easier for you to commit crimes, why would you not? And if you're not going to get punished, why not continue committing the crime anyway? You can get arrested and be out by lunch. Doesn't seem like a problem to me. But the point I'm getting at here, my friends, is we're not focusing on the real cause of problems. We're placing blame where it doesn't deserve to be. We're not holding anyone accountable, criminals or politicians or otherwise. And that's one of the reasons why you have such a high crime rate in American cities. You have to hold criminals responsible. That is one of the chief functions of government, police, to make sure that people are held accountable, that we have personal responsibility, and that individuals are forced to take responsibility for the things that they do. If Democrat politicians do not, citizens are going to have to take things into their own hands. So, because you can only steal from someone for so long until they actually take action. And in fact, I've got another story in the stack of stuff here about a Walgreens. Walgreens has started pulling stores from crime-ridden neighborhoods because they're getting robbed 10 and 12 times a day, and it's not financially feasible to keep the store open. So just pull it. You're going to save money by not having a store there than replacing goods. And the Democrat politicians, Ayanna Pressley, I believe I've got the soundbite from Pressley. They're the ones that are saying, well, it's it's the company's fault. They are the racist ones. The federal government should force them to open up a store in a crime-ridden neighborhood. We have to get back to sanity, my friends. The people on the left that advocate for these stupid policies, they know darn good and well what the cause of crime is, and it's not car manufacturers. More after the break. In case you haven't noticed, it's still cold outside. It's still January, we're still in the middle of winter, and February is still coming. And you are going to have to shovel the walk the entire time. One of the most important things to remember when shoveling the walk for the missus is to make sure that your feet stay nice and toasty warm. And the best way that you can do that is with a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. The Buffalo Wool Company makes the warmest socks that I've ever put on my feet. And trust me, you are not going to be disappointed. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. The Independence Network is only going to get stronger. Just Blame Joey, Cowboy State Politics, The Ramble Room, Wide Right Turn, The Hair Affair with Christine, the Independence Network articles. This network is expanding at a rate that nobody thought was going to happen. Even me. I thought it was going to take a while, and I have to tell you, my friends, this thing has gotten bigger than in just a few months that we've been on the air. The Independence Network is having a tremendous impact. So make sure that you don't miss a minute of all the great programming on the station. Coming up directly after Cowboy State Politics is Paul Harvey, and then at 11:05, Just Blame Joey. Now, just to give you a heads up of probably what's going to happen next week, I've got a pack to go down to Cheyenne, and getting ready is going to take me a couple of days. So we'll probably just do the program 3 times next week and then take Thursday and Friday off. Don't worry, I'll have some content for you to listen to. But we got to prepare for the big move to Cheyenne. We're excited. We're going to bring you coverage that no other news outlet is capable of. Certainly not the Cow Pie, and definitely not the Pravda on the Platte. I don't even think they have a politics reporter anymore. So it's going to be the Independence Network. I'm going to be covering the House. Our pal Joey is going to be covering the Senate. You're going to have new programs, and probably the way that it's going to work, I'm thinking, is that I'll do an hour in the morning to get you revved up for what's going to happen during the legislative session. And then in the evening, I'll probably do another hour, and I'm assuming at least a couple days a week, Joey and I will have kind of a roundtable discussion of what's been going on. So we're going to bring you a lot of content from what's happening in Cheyenne, the Middle Swamp, and you don't want to miss a minute of it. The easiest way to listen to the program, as you already know, is go to the website, independencenetwork.us. Also, make sure that you're paying attention to the Cowboy State Politics podcast. I've been pretty lucky lately in being able to break a couple of big stories. The most recent one, if you haven't listened to it yet, it's called They're Working Against You, is about the Department of Revenue training a bunch of lobbyists about a bill that has not even been heard on the floor of the House of Representatives yet. That means that you've paid for training for something that your representative hasn't even had a chance to vote on yet. And here's the kicker. Somebody told the Department of Revenue to put together that thing and to be able to and to train some of these lobbyists. The lobbyists I'm talking about is the county commissioner or the County Assessors Association. Anytime in Wyoming that you hear the word association, that's not a government gig. That's a private association, a lobbying association. Just like the County Commissioners Association, they're a big lobbying group. They lobby for more funding for counties. They're a big anti-gun organization, though they claim not to be. And the assessors, and this is why this one is so insidious, the training was done so that county assessors, the association, have a handle on what House Bill 45 would do, because it will be the county assessors that are testifying that, this bill really won't be that complicated. We could put this into practice pretty easily. Not going to be that big of a deal. It's really going to help people. I mean, the fix is in, my friends. So if you haven't listened to that, it was the Wednesday program. Go back to the Cowboy State Politics podcast and listen to it. I'll lay it all out for you. It's a shocking story, and yet another one that the Independence Network broke, and also one that the mainstream Wyoming media has completely ignored. And I promise you, my friends, that they absolutely know about it. It's just they choose not to report on it. They've got someone that watches my podcast, and I'm sure they have somebody that listens to the Independence Network. So it's absolutely outrageous that it hasn't been covered, because I lay out the documents. If you want to look at the training manual, it's a 27-page document that was put together by the Department of Revenue. It's on the Cowboy State Politics website on the show content tab. You can go through there and read it yourself. So another place where Democrats are refusing to punish the people responsible for crime is in the realm of drunk drivers. Now, all of us are going to, most of us would argue that drunk driving is a pretty big offense, that you put numerous people in danger, and unless you're a Johnson County official named Wrong Way Bill Novotny, we tend to punish people pretty heavily for drunk driving. Speaking of which, we should probably get thanks to Joey Corretti for this one, we should probably get a traffic report from the Novotny traffic cam. It goes something like this. So what are all these people doing in my lane? All I'm seeing is headlights, and all the signs are backwards. Get out of my lane. Yeah. So Bill Novotny got a ticket for driving the wrong way on the interstate probably between Sheridan and Buffalo, while eluding police with an open container, and when he finally pulled over after eluding police for 8 miles, he blew a .187 on the side of the road, clearly hammered, and he only got a year of probation and a $1,000 fine. If that were the rest of us, any one of the rest of us, would be thrown in jail for 6 months at least and have way more fines, but not if you're a county official in Wyoming. But if you're a member of the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C., you're going to vote against a bill to deport illegal alien drunk drivers. Now, that sentence has a number of problems with it already. First of all, how can illegal aliens get a driver's license? Don't you have to have a place of residence, and you have to be able to prove that you live at said address? So how can an illegal immigrant who has no paperwork, no Social Security card — by the way, when you register for a driver's license, typically you have to provide your Social Security number. How do you get one if you're an illegal immigrant? Well, you don't, which means that not only are these people driving drunk, they're driving without a driver's license, committing multiple crimes. From Breitbart News, and I quote, "The overwhelming majority of House Democrats voted against legislation this week that would make sure illegal alien drunk drivers are deported from the United States following their convictions. On Wednesday, 150 House Democrats voted against the Protect Our Communities from DUIs Act by Representative Barry Moore from Alabama, which would make drunk driving grounds for ineligibility to be in the United States. In practice, the law would ensure that immigration and customs enforcement agents can swiftly take illegal aliens convicted of drunk driving into their custody so that they can be deported." Just 59 House Democrats broke ranks with party leadership, joining the 215 House Republicans to ultimately pass the bill. Quote, "There was a newlywed couple from my hometown of Enterprise, Alabama, named Angel and Jeremy Say. I knew them personally. Angel and Jeremy were riding their motorcycle together when an illegal immigrant under the influence of alcohol collided into them with his pickup. How could he own a pickup if he's an illegal alien? Anyway, their lives were cut dramatically short. Sadly, tragedies like this are not uncommon in our country. In another vote this week, 155 House Democrats voted against legislation from Representative Tom McClintock that would ensure ICE agents can promptly deport illegal aliens convicted of Social Security fraud against American citizens. So Social Security fraud for any of the rest of us is a felony, unless, of course, you plead it down to some ridiculous charge, and if you're a Democrat. So, again, my friends, apparently the only people who get prosecuted for crimes are Republicans. If you're a Democrat or an illegal immigrant, you can steal the Queen's silver and get away with it. On ABC, I know, we're going towards The View. But one of the hosts said that voters felt threatened by Obama and made Trump their messiah. Now, I try really hard not to play anything from The View here, but in this case, I absolutely couldn't resist, simply because I've been looking for an opportunity to explain to you exactly how racist the Democrats' messiah or messianic figure, Barack Obama, actually is. And such an opportunity presented itself to me this morning. So they were responding to the interview that Nikki Haley did with Charlemagne the God. I think we just here on out, we'll just call him Charlemagne, because I find it pretty blasphemous to refer to that guy as a god, especially because he can't hardly talk. But anyway, they were responding to an interview that Nikki Haley, the same one that I played sound bites from yesterday. And the response was incredible. So first, let's listen to what was said on The View, and then we'll talk about it. Now, so we're first going to play the sound bite from Nikki Haley's interview with Charlemagne. So first we'll listen to that, and then we'll talk about it.
Take a look.
With Obama, that was, if you go back, that's when we really started to feel the division. That's when it was.
A lot of that was because of white supremacists, though.
What?
No, it wasn't because of white supremacy, because Obama stoked the fires of race in this country like no president ever has. When we get done with this, I'm going to give you about 3 minutes proving that guy's a racist. But let's continue.
I think it was everything. Everything was exaggerated with the Obama administration. It became more about gender. It became more about race. People felt like they were being put in camps through that administration.
You said you believe that states have the right to secede.
I think states have the right to make the decisions that their people want to make. If Texas decides they want to do that, they can do that.
Okay, so listen to the crowd. The crowd is, people that watch The View clearly are not that informed just by virtue of what they're watching. Because the ladies on The View are, to put it mildly, the biggest moronic group of people that I think I've ever tried to listen to. And I don't try to listen to them very often for obvious reasons. But what's going to happen is that one of the ladies on The View, and I've cut out Whoopi Goldberg because I think she's a moron, but the soundbite skips a little bit, and then you'll hear what we're going to talk about.
I am just curious.
Whoops, I guess I played some of Whoopi.
So if she thinks the division really became enhanced under Obama, what was the problem with the 3 little girls that got bombed in the church in 1962?
Okay, so Whoopi's going way back to the 1960s to try to disprove Nikki Haley's point. And Haley's point, of course, is that we made numerous strides. And I don't want to defend Nikki Haley here, but I think I kind of have to, just simply because I want to play that montage I put together for you. But anyway, going back to the 60s, and Whoopi Goldberg's going to give you another example that's from a long time ago. But Nikki Haley's point is that when Obama got into office, he very clearly stoked the fires of racism at every opportunity. So let's continue.
What was the problem with Emmett Till? Were they just fooling around? Were they just angry about nothing? What are you talking about?
right. I don't know if, as Whoopi posed, she's saying this to attract a certain voter. But in terms of the Obama years leading to divisiveness, I think Van Jones said it appropriately. He said that was the Trump vote was a white lash.
Okay, so that first one right there. How does one get elected president? Well, you have to get a whole bunch of people to vote for you. And demographically, do African Americans possess a majority in this country or a minority? The truth is, African Americans are in the extreme minority in America. So you had to get elected president, you had to have a lot of, as Obama would put it, white folks vote for you. So Trump's election was not a white lash. It was a backlash against all of the policies of the Obama administration. That's exactly what it was. And yeah, Barack Obama got elected twice, and a lot of people voted for him. Way more people voted for him the second time than the first. So it wasn't a white lash, as the dumb Van Jones claims that it is. Listen to what the rest of she had to say is.
It was a response to a black president and seeing a black man be the most powerful person on earth.
Two times, by the way.
Twice.
2 times.
I think it was a certain group of voters that were afraid that was a very diverse vote. White people, black people, Spanish people, Asian people. Everyone voted for a black man with unassailable character. And I think...
Remember that term in just a minute. Unassailable character. What does the word unassailable mean? It means that no matter how hard you try, you just can't attack his character. There's no way possible that you could even insinuate that Barack Obama had a mean bone in his body. That's what that means.
In response to that, they felt otherized, and they just threatened, and they decided that Trump was their messiah.
Ah, yes. We all decided that Trump was our messiah. It couldn't be that American voters decided that it was time to put a businessman in the White House. It couldn't have anything to do with that. It couldn't have anything to do with Americans being sick and tired of the race baiting coming from the White House. Couldn't have anything to do with that, could it? Nope. It was time to put a screeching halt to all of that stuff and elect some guy who actually knows how to run a business. Now, during the election, Trump said some really inflammatory things. A lot of video came out. They tried to attack his character. And what happened? He got elected with a huge number of electoral votes. I mean, he soundly defeated Hillary Clinton. So considering everything that had come out, all of the attacks that they tried to make on his character, and the media went full force after Donald Trump came down that escalator. So why did he get elected? Well, because people were tired of what we've been putting up with. And to suggest that Barack Obama has some sort of unassailable character is absolutely ridiculous. That guy is a racist, my friends, and just listen to him in his own words.
That's just how white folks will do you.
Typical white person.
We've created, you've seen created in Republican politics, this sense that white males are victims. Like they're the ones who are like under attack, which obviously doesn't jibe with both history and data and economics. But that's a sincere belief. That's been internalized. That's a story that's being told. And
what is absolutely clear is that we have seen what used to be or had been relegated to the fringes of Republican Party rhetoric now moved front and center. This fear of the other, this suggestion that somehow there's real Americans and then there are people who I guess are fake Americans. And somehow the fake Americans tend to look like me.
The point I was making was not that my grandmother harbors any racial animosity. She doesn't. Right. But she is a typical white person who, if she sees somebody on the street that she doesn't know, there's a reaction that's been bred into our experiences that don't go away and that sometimes come out in the wrong way.
That hate hadn't gone away. It formed a counter-narrative, buried deep within each person, and at the center of which stood white people. Some cruel, some ignorant, sometimes a single face, sometimes just a faceless image of a system claiming power over our lives. Actually, he's right, I said. It is a racist book. The way Conrad sees it, Africa's the cesspool of the world, black folks are savages, and any contact with them breeds infection. Regina blew on her coffee. So why are you reading it? Because it's assigned. I paused, not sure if I should go on. And because the book teaches me things, I said. About white people, I mean.
I don't know, not having been there and not seeing all the facts, what role race played in that. But I think it's fair to say, number one, any of us would be pretty angry. Number two, that the Cambridge police acted stupidly.
It's not surprising then that they get bitter and they cling to guns or religion or antipathy towards people who aren't like them, or anti-immigrant sentiment, or anti-trade sentiment.
That's just how white folks will do you.
This is something that is deeply rooted in our society. It's deeply rooted in our history.
Do you think Donald Trump is a racist?
I think that Donald Trump, I don't know what's in his mind and what's in his heart. What I can say is that his rhetoric has oftentimes tapped into themes that have been used in this country for years in order to block the full participation of African Americans in our country's lives. He is more than happy to fan racist sentiments.
No, see, did you hear that unassailable character? Did you see how he doesn't have a mean bone in his body? How he just loves everyone, except, of course, for white folks.
That's just how white folks will do you.
Exactly right. There is no reason why people idolize Barack Obama and are able to forgive all of the crazy racist things that he said. And at the same time, these same people, and I'm not just talking about The View here, I could really care less about those people. I couldn't care less about those people. I'm talking about those folks who dismiss every misdeed of Democrats, but at the same time rail on conservatives for marginally less egregious behavior. That Donald Trump is the messiah of white folks, but Barack Obama, even though he's a screaming racist, I just played 3 minutes in his own words of him saying some really racist stuff. But, it's Barack Obama, so he's unassailable. My friends, we have got to get back to truth. We've got to get back to a point at which we can say things that are true and be able to prove them and back them up. There are so many lies that are going on right now that it's absolutely amazing. Just this morning, a friend of mine down in Cheyenne sent me an advertisement from the Wyoming caucus. Those people have printed so many op-eds that are either A, completely untrue, or B, only have a little string of truth through them to lead you to believe that they're telling you the truth. But we've got to move away from this space where we're not dealing with facts, where we're not dealing with true things. I mean, it's absolutely shocking. So there's, I guess you might call this one sort of a funny story. To me, it's really, really troubling. And again, it's just another sign of our times. And maybe you missed this one. Maybe you saw this story. But according to Breitbart News, the Capitol Police, and I can't believe I'm even going to say this, but the Capitol Police won't charge 2 men in a Senate gay porn scandal. So to give you the nuts and bolts of this thing, I couldn't resist, my friends. I teed myself up too good for that one. To give you the details about this, 2 congressional staffers filmed a gay porn movie in a Senate committee meeting room. and neither of them are going to be charged with a crime. From Breitbart News, and I quote, "The two men who filmed and appeared in a gay porn video in a Senate hearing chamber seem to have dodged legal repercussions. U.S. Capitol Police announced Thursday that they found no evidence that a crime was committed and will not bring charges against two men." Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is fairly difficult to have sex if you're not naked. I'm just, or at least part of you has to be naked. And do we not have laws against public indecency? And certainly, do we not have laws against public indecency in a public building? I know of one individual that's been in the news recently that absolutely got charged with a crime for taking pictures of himself inside a public building. Of course, I'm referring to the vice president of the Wyoming Press Association. So why is it that the Capitol Police could not charge these two individuals for filming such a movie inside the Senate building? Quote from the Capitol Police, "For now, we're closing the investigation into the facts and circumstances surrounding a sex video that was recorded inside the Hart Senate office building on the morning of Wednesday, December 13th. After consulting with federal and local prosecutors, as well as doing a comprehensive investigation and review of possible charges, it was determined that, despite a likely violation of congressional policy, there is currently no evidence that any crime was committed." Oh, I think that there were a whole host of crimes committed. The graphic video that led to the firing was first released by the Daily Caller. It shows a congressional staffer, later identified as Maze Saprosky, maybe, having sex with an unknown man on a table in the Senate hearing room where senators often sit to ask questions during hearings. This individual was fired by his then employer, Senator Ben Cardin, a Democrat from Maryland. Now that he is no longer a Senate employee, it is unlikely that he will face further repercussions. How is it that we got to a place where you could film a porno in a Senate office building and not be prosecuted for anything? The least of which could have been public indecency. Certainly, after it was found out what Woody did in a public library, he was prosecuted and could have faced further repercussions, except that he pled it down. So why is it that in our nation's capital there are not similar laws? I'm assuming there are, but because these two individuals' boss was a Democrat, they're not facing any prosecution, my friends. The rules do not apply to the Democrats. They only apply to Republicans. And there are so many examples of that principle. It's not a principle, that's the wrong word. So many things that point to that eventual fact. And I think that at this point we can call it a fact. Think about all the Democrats that have committed crimes but have not been prosecuted. Think about the people in positions of power that have committed crimes and nothing has been done to them. Not a day in jail, measly probation or a pretty low fine in comparison to the crime that was committed. But if you're a Republican, man, they throw the book at you. Take, for example, Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden had on his laptop evidence of numerous crimes, some of which I'm sure that the statute of limitations had run out on. But now, because he's in legal water, and again, another headline that it's pretty hard to believe, but from Breitbart this morning, Hunter compares himself to famous dead children in history. Yeah, I know. I told you it was going to be hard to believe that one. And I quote, Hunter Biden reportedly compared himself to famous dead children in history within a recent court filing. The filing is the latest offense used by Hunter in his gun case. Okay, so he's accused of buying a gun and lying on the ATF form, which is a serious crime. If you or I did that, would definitely be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But because this guy has the last name of Biden, the Department of Justice has tried every maneuver they can think of to get him out of it. And I quote, known for his infamous addiction to crack cocaine, smoking Parmesan cheese, that's the first time I had heard of that, and participating in illicit sexual activities, that is, videoing himself with hookers, Hunter used Greek and Roman mythology to defend himself, constitutional scholar Jonathan Turley wrote Thursday, mocking the president's son. And I quote, In his bizarre filing comparing himself to famous dead children in history, Hunter refers to Hector, the son of the king of Troy, as murdered by Odysseus. It was actually Achilles, and it was a fair fight. Will the National Hellenic Society move to strike? He further explained in a New York Post op-ed. Hunter profited massively from the Biden name, but now his Hunter Abbey Lowell, who by all accounts is an incredible attorney, he's suffering from the burden of parentage. To back up his argument, Lowell cites Pyler versus Doe, a case involving the providing of free education to the children of illegal immigrants, to say that the Constitution, quote, prevents the government from inflicting harm on children for the conduct of their parents. Quote, that's right. Joe Biden is like an undocumented migrant father who carried his kid over the border for a better life. The defense in and of itself is preposterous. It is not crimes committed by his father that Hunter is being prosecuted for. They are crimes committed by Hunter Biden. And until we get past this whole dumb thing where it is only conservatives that get prosecuted, that you're on restricted grounds and you're thrown in prison for an undetermined amount of time, that you're given sentences for 17 years in prison for basically doing nothing more than parading around the Capitol building. And yet Hunter Biden is able to lie on an ATF form, film himself with prostitutes, film himself smoking crack cocaine and doing coke off of the back of prostitutes. And yet he doesn't get prosecuted, but it's the rest of us. Sign of our times, my friends. We have to get back to a system of justice. Justice being that the laws apply to everybody equally, no matter if your name is Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, or if your name is David Iverson. The laws need to apply to everyone equally. Well, let's take our final break, and then we'll get back to the program. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a selection of better news, entertainment, and commentary than right here on the Independence Network, with great voices like Joey Carenti from Just Blame Joey, Ken Pendergraft from The Ramble Room, and of course, my program, Cowboy State Politics, Wyoming's most listened to political program. Also, don't forget to check out the article section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. During the break, the Chiron on Fox News read that President Biden is attending what is called the dignified transfer of 3 soldiers that were killed by a terrorist strike over in the Middle East. Now, that's an important thing, and we should absolutely have reverence for any of our service members that die in defense of our freedoms, because let's just be honest, that's what it is. You know, anytime I bump into a veteran, instead of just saying some vapid thank you for your service, I tell them thank you for making the choices that I didn't make. Thank you for my freedom. Thank you for everything that you did for me. And all you have to do, my friends, when you run into a veteran or when you run into a veteran, is just sit down with them and thank them. That's all you have to do. Ask them how their day was. That's it. There have been a couple public speaking appearances that I've done where I get a chance to talk to our pal Joey Carenti all the time. But he served 20 years in the military. And people like Joey, who sacrificed a lot, and certainly the folks that didn't come home, deserve our utmost respect. And we should do everything that we can to show them that respect. But not if your name is Joe Biden. Now, he is attending the dignified transfer today. And hopefully that all goes well and he does the presidential thing. It's a solemn duty that he has, and hopefully he takes it as serious as he should. But that he wasn't taking it all that serious when he talked to one of the mothers of those fallen soldiers. In fact, he lied to them. He said that he lost his son, Bo, in Iraq. Now, it could be that Biden is so delusional and is experiencing so much dementia that he doesn't know where his son, Bo, died. The truth is that his son, Bo, died from a brain tumor. He didn't die in Iraq. He didn't die on foreign soil. But yet, Joe Biden, his fraudulency, is claiming that he did. And I quote, Biden lies to another Gold Star mom about losing his son in Iraq. And I quote, his fraudulency, Joe Biden, spoke to grieving Gold Star parents Tuesday and used a solemn occasion to repeat the lie about losing a son in Iraq. Sean and Oneida Oliver Sanders, the freshly grieving parents of a 24-year-old specialist, Kennedy LaDawn Sanders, who died in Jordan during an Iran-backed drone attack in January, spoke to Biden Tuesday from their Georgia home. At first, Biden tried to help with the news that their daughter would be posthumously promoted to sergeant. Quote, oh, wow, that's the best news I've heard today. Thank you so much, Oliver Sanders said before she and her husband broke down in tears. You don't know how much that means to us. And then everything went sideways. Here's what the President of the United States told them. Maybe. There we go.
I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over.
Oh, that's the wrong one. Hold on just a second. I've got two Biden sound bites here right in a row, and I hit the wrong one. Here we go.
We're promoting her posthumously to sergeant.
Oh, wow. That is the best news I've heard today. Thank you so much. You don't know how much that means to us.
Oh, well, I tell you what, it means a lot to me. My son spent a year in Iraq. That's how I lost him. And 1% of all these kids are the ones that we're going to take care of 99% of us.
Joe Biden's oldest son, Bo Biden, was deployed to Iraq in 2008, but he didn't die there. After his year of active duty, Bo returned with a Bronze Star and returned to his life as a Delaware Attorney General. 3 years later, he was diagnosed, it was brain cancer, not a brain tumor. 2 years later, at the age of 46, he died. To shield the serial lie about losing Bo in Iraq, Biden likes to claim, without any evidence, that Bo contracted his cancer 7 years prior in Iraq due to exposure to military burn pits. Even if Joe Biden truly believes that, you cannot compare Bo's tragedy to what happens to those who die in a combat situation. This is not the first time that Biden has told this lie. In October of 2022, while designated Camp Hale as a national monument, he said, quote, I say this as a father of a man who won the Bronze Star, the Conspicuous Service Medal, and lost his life in Iraq. The following month, Biden told a gathering, I'm thinking about Iraq because that's where my son died. Worse still, this is not even the first Gold Star parent Biden has lied to about Bo. In August of 2023, Gold Star mother Cheryl Rex said that Biden told her that Bo came, quote, home in a flag-draped coffin. That simply didn't happen. Bo died 6 years after he returned from Iraq. When he approached me, his words were still, quote, my wife Jill and I know how you feel. We lost our son as well and brought him home in a flag-draped coffin, end quote. How could someone be so heartless to lie about their dead son, to lie to a Gold Star family who is freshly grieving, who has to take that coffin home? And like I said, it's quite possible that Joe Biden doesn't have any idea where his son died. But I would think that even in his dementia-laden body, that he would have to remember that. And you would think that one of Biden's staffers would brief the president, okay, Mr. President, here's how Bo actually died. Put it in his teleprompter, put it on notes or something. But no, Biden is just allowed to continue to lie over and over and over again. And it's because, my friends, and one of the reasons why he's allowed to lie is he's a Democrat. But the bigger reason is that we no longer place the same value on truth. Everything is parsed. When a politician says a lie, they immediately come out and say, I misspoke. They don't say, I screwed up and I was wrong. No, they say, I misspoke. Or, worse yet, they just completely ignore it. It's absolutely shocking. My prayers go out to that family that had to sit there and listen to Joe Biden lie to them. It's absolutely heart-wrenching. I can't wish that on anyone else. But it's not just Joe Biden that engages in lies. Lots and lots of politicians do. And it's always for a purpose. And now, more than I think in the past, lies are used to push the issue of race. And the Democrats are masters of this. Now, I mentioned this at the beginning of the program, that Ayanna Pressley, a rabid Democrat, she's now claiming that Walgreens closures are life-threatening acts of discrimination. Yeah, you heard that right. From Breitbart, and I quote, The latest Walgreens closure in Democrat Ayanna Pressley's state of Massachusetts, namely on Warren Street in Roxbury, is the result of racial discrimination, she claimed on the House floor. Quote, Mr. Speaker, Walgreens is planning to close yet another pharmacy in the Massachusetts 7th, this time on Warren Street in Roxbury, a community that is 85% black and Latino. The biggest part of this larger trend of abandoning low-income communities. When a Walgreens leaves the neighborhood, they disrupt the entire community, and they take with them baby formula, diapers, asthma inhalers, life-saving medications, and, of course, jobs, she continued, explaining her belief that these closures are not arbitrary and they are not innocent. Here is Ayanna Pressley saying that from the House floor. Listen to this load of bullcrap.
Mr. Speaker, Walgreens is planning to close yet another pharmacy in the Massachusetts 7th, this time on Warren Street in Roxbury, a community that is 85% black and Latino. This closure is a part of a larger trend of abandoning low-income communities like the previous closures in Mattapan and Hyde Park, both in the Massachusetts 7th. When a Walgreens leaves a neighborhood, they disrupt the entire community, and they take with them baby formula, diapers, asthma inhalers, life-saving medications, and of course, jobs. These closures are not arbitrary and they are not innocent. They are life-threatening acts of racial and economic discrimination. That is why I joined with Senator Markey and Warren to demand answers from Walgreens CEO. Why was there no community input, no adequate notice to customers, and no transition resources to prevent gaps in health care? Shame on you, Walgreens. Having a website with talking points about health equity and underserved communities is not enough. Walgreens is a multi-billion-dollar corporation that needs to put their money where their mouth is and stop divesting from black.
Why was there no government intervention? Why was there no public comment period? Why was there no public notice? Why weren't other measures put in place? Because it's a private corporation that continues to get robbed. That's why. Because it's a private business owned by a corporation that they can make decisions that are in the best interests of their business. The government does not control private business, though the government is trying or is making every attempt to do so. Ayanna Pressley is a Democrat radical leftist, thinking that the government is in control of everything. And if left to their own devices, there's no reason why they would not assume or they would not try to gain control over more businesses. It is people like Ayanna Pressley that use lies. That is, that the reason why Walgreens moved out of her community is because of race. The reason they moved out is they're robbed about 12 times a day, and they've had to put gum behind a locked cabinet. That's actually a news story that was on, I think it was on The Blaze, either yesterday or this morning. Private corporations do not operate at the behest of Representative Ayanna Pressley. And maybe if she wanted Walgreens to stay in her district, she should convince the local politicians to do something about the crime. Force people to take responsibility for their actions. Punish criminals. Stop the crime. If you want goods and services from private entities to come into your community, you have to make sure that it's safe for that business to come in there. To suggest that a business endure rampant crime is only something a radical socialist would even posit. It's absolutely ridiculous, my friends, but it is just another sign of our times where even though she's a radical leftist, and I don't think that there's that many people that actually believe half the crap that comes out of Presley's mouth, still, it is a sign of our times when an elected representative to the United States House of Representatives gets on the floor and spouts lies like that. Now, she's not alone. Ilhan Omar does that all of the time. The real AOC, not Albert Ogden conservative, does that all the time. But that doesn't make it right. Just because somebody else gets away with something doesn't mean that you are entitled to it. It's absolutely ridiculous, my friends. And we have got to get back to a place where we are speaking truth, to where facts matter, to where, we have people in office that truly believe that telling people the truth is an important virtue. It's just like Jordan Peterson said yesterday when I played him on the program. Actually, let me dig that soundbite up again because it was a good one. But when you speak the truth, it is absolutely liberating. Here's what Jordan Peterson had to say. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. Take a listen to this. It's a little bit long.
Actually asked for an alternative to the view that you were expressing, the somewhat pessimistic view of the dominance of people in power. In the video that led up to your entrance onto the stage, you pointed out a realization that you had, which was that nothing better in your life can happen to you than what happens if you tell the truth. And I believe that to be the case. I actually believe that that's why we have the idea that power is vested in the people. And I don't think that power is where people think it is. I don't think that power is in the hands of the elite. The ability to manipulate, misuse power might be in the hands of the elite, but the power that we need to set the world straight is actually at your fingertips. And this is actually a rather terrifying realization, because there's some relief in thinking that the elites can do whatever they want, and there's nothing that someone as small as you could possibly do about it. And that's wrong because you're not small. And it's wrong because it's irresponsible to presume that. And it's wrong because the truth is more terrifying and also more liberating. And the truth of the matter is that if you utilized what you had at hand, which at least is the ability that you have at hand to say what you think truly and as clearly as you can, even if you're not that articulate, that the world would change around you in ways that would make you immune to the blandishments of the power-mongering elite. And I'm hoping that enough people will realize the power of their affinity with the truth, especially when it's allied with the will to aim up, to have the courage to speak that truth. And if enough people do that, then the terrible things that we're concerned about coming forward at us in the future will have no purchase whatsoever. Like I learned a long time ago that the war that we're in is psychological or spiritual, if you want to look at it that way, rather than political. And everyone has a sense of that now, that it's something is moving that's deeper than the mere political. The tectonic plates themselves are shifting, and you're all going to play a role in that, and the role you'll play is going to be determined by what you determine to ally your speech with, for example, your decision about whether or not you're going to tell the truth in the confines of your own life. And if enough people, all of you, if enough of you decide in the local circumstances of your own life to dare to say what you believe to be true, then the tyrants will have no purchase on you and you won't be slaves. And just by definition.
Can I just...
The tyrants will have no purchase over you, and you will not be slaves, if only you speak the truth. I think there's no way that I could have put it better than what Jordan Peterson had to say in that soundbite. And we have to get back to that space where people speak the truth to each other, that we speak the truth in politics. Because I firmly believe, and perhaps this is to my detriment, but I firmly believe that each one of us has our own little truth detector inside. Now, we can put up walls to kind of wall it off, and the more walls we put up, the harder it is for us to hear the truth. But my friends, the truth has no agenda, and people inherently know it when it's spoken in front of them. There's a lot of stories that I read that alarm bells go off in my head, and I say, there's no way possible that this could absolutely be the truth. It just didn't happen that way. Either because I know the person or because it just doesn't ring true. But if we get back to a space, if we in our personal lives make the choice to speak the truth and back it up, there is nothing that can stop. Now, you're going to have to make the argument. You're going to have to say, yes, this is true because of X, Y, and Z, but you have to back it up. Now, just look at the credibility of my own program. For 4 seasons now, I've done episode after episode, and actually Saturday's installment of Weekend Update will be number 600. But the reason why I have credibility is because I put the proof out there. You can read it for yourself. You don't have to believe a word that comes out of my mouth. Go do your own research. Learn the true things for yourself. Know them to be true. The truth has no agenda, my friends. It is only to expose fact. And trust me, my friends, in Wyoming, there is no shortage of things that need to be exposed. And if I had the time to continually expose things day after day, I would like nothing more. But the burden is partially on you. Everybody has politicians in their own community, most of which are probably telling them a load of bull crap. So it's their responsibility to expose the truth. Let's talk about those flyers that were sent out to Steve Harshman and Barry Crago's district. Now, I haven't personally seen the one from Steve Harshman, but they're pretty clearly from the same source, and I can tell you for a fact that there's only one mistake on the ones that were sent out about Barry Crago, and it was only one minor one. The flyer claimed that a vote took place in one committee when it actually happened to take place in another committee. A minor error. But the rest of it on there, absolutely the truth. And the reason that you know it's the truth is that Barry Crago has not even tried to engage with the material to show his constituents, okay, this one is not true because of X, Y, and Z. This one is not true because of A, B, C. He's not done any of that. He's just out of whole cloth said, these things are all lies. Well, generally speaking, that's a pretty good indicator that whomever you hear say that is telling you a boatload of lies. But the way that you arm yourself against all of that is to know these things to be true. Get informed. Be an informed voter. Know these arguments for yourself. Be able to produce the evidence when asked. Say, nope, this isn't true. Let me prove it to you. Trust me, my friends, I get such a charge out of being able to do that, saying, nope, this person is absolutely not telling you the truth. Here is the proof. Read it for yourself. My friends, the truth has no agenda, and that is one of the mantras. Well, I mean, the truth is one of the things we strive for at the Independence Network, but all three of us and the folks that are joining the network believe that the truth has no agenda. My friends, we've come to the end of another busy broadcast day on Cowboy State Politics. Coming up after the program, we've got Paul Harvey and then Just Blame Joey with our pal Joey Correnti. Have a good weekend, my friends.